Hello, I'm James,
Hi, I'm Jimmy,
and welcome to A Job Done Well.
the podcast that helps you improve your performance and enjoyment at work.
Hello. What are we talking about today then?
Hi, James. Well, today we are talking about how you can negotiate noise at work, because work is getting more and more noisy and people are getting bogged down by the corporate noise that exists. Noise could be emails, politics, meetings, corporate training, reports, papers, you name it. We're going to share some of our top tips to help you avoid getting bogged down.
It's interesting. Now this shows me age here. When I started work, we had a lot of offices around the country, and we had the inter-office post. We had those brown envelopes. Remember those brown? Yeah, you've got to be over 50 to remember the bloody brown envelopes. But we used to have these brown envelopes, and you used to put people's names on with a piece of string to seal it, and used to go around internal post. But when you're relying on brown envelopes to ship the noise around, it slows things down a little bit, and people get time to think. Whereas you can't send the email and then think, oh shit, I really should not have sent it. So I think the best way to cure the noise is we just need to all go back to brown envelopes.
Well, let's not focus too much on that as being the answer to today's podcast.
Jump the shark.
Well, I think you might have done.
All right. So go on then. If we're not jumping the shark, tell me, what is noise? What's your definition and what's your experience of it?
So for me, noise is all the stuff that happens that makes working life feel like running through quicksand at times. Stuff that gets in the way of successful delivery. I'd call it corporate treacle. And we've all experienced it. It can be lots of forms, but it just takes you away from your purpose, your results, your objectives, what you're here to do. It's all the stuff that gets in the way. And I think one of the big issues is it goes unchecked. So within organizations, grows it's like ivy climbing up a house. It grows unchecked. Nobody's there to keep it in control. Nobody's monitoring the number of meetings that are happening, the amount of email traffic that's going on, the amount of corporate noise that goes on. It doesn't get measured, so it gets unchecked. So
I've probably said this before, but I used to have a boss, bless her, who used to sit in meetings all the time with a laptop open doing her emails, and she was constantly looking at flipping emails and never paying any attention to the meeting. And that for me is what noise is. It's just the stuff that gets in the way.
I think you're right, but in my experience, every organization I've worked with, it's always existed to varying degrees. So why do you think that noise exists?
Well, the first one for me actually is just as simple as conflicting objectives.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're trying to do something and somebody else is trying to do something else, and they just totally misaligned, then you do create conflicts. And that very conflict creates noise. It can't help but. So that for me is the first step of it. But I think that's not the root of it. It's almost like the 5 whys. Why do you get noise? Because of conflicting objectives. The other question then becomes, why do you get conflicting objectives?
And you often get conflicting objectives because organizations haven't been clear on their purpose, what they're here to do. Now, in my experience, when you're not all crystal clear on why you're here, everyone starts building their own kind of agendas and their own pet projects or their own initiatives or whatever it is. All of that stuff that doesn't help you get to where you're going to get to, I think both in terms of conflicting agendas, but also stuff that doesn't really move the organization forward. I think both of those are reasons why noise exists.
It's a clear source. Maybe this is a bit of a catch-all, but an obvious one is just, well, you can either have too much control and governance where people are hell-bent on controlling their little bit of the organization,
or you can have not enough. So an example that exists in nearly every organization is email. The amount of email traffic there is, and is there any oversight or any control over emails? In most organizations I've worked with, everyone does what they want.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. And it is, you're right, it's just nice. And there's the whole thing about switching costs. If you're sitting there looking at your email, then each new email you get, it costs you time to switch from what you were thinking about.
It does.
And it just, yeah. saps the life out of you.
And one organisation I worked in, which I think was quite progressive about this, it was trying to encourage people. Everyone does all their work by email, right? A lot of the time. And all I do is I send you an email, get the task off my back and onto your back, right? Rather than just come along, have a quick conversation and settle whatever it is that we're doing. Well, they had a 48-hour rule, which was basically don't expect a reply to an email in 48 hours. So that meant that it took away this imagined immediacy that you should be replying to my emails like that, because you knew you weren't going to get it for a couple of days. If you wanted a quick answer, that forced you to go and talk to people.
There's a cost saving in that, right? We could get rid of all these email servers and invest in some brown envelopes. That would get you there automatically.
So you keep coming back to your brown envelopes, James.
Right. Okay, then. So there you go. Conflicting agendas and lack of focus. The other big one, I think, for me, is just the culture of the organization, because I don't think all organizations have the same amount of knowledge as others. Yeah. So one of the things I've worked in some organizations, it's just childish. It's sort of, who shouts loudest gets what they want, school of management.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where you allow that to happen, then that just creates a lot of noise and reactivity. So that will be one of the things that I will pick out.
Yeah, I think also there's that classic short-term focus. So we're always focused on this month's review, this month's objective, this year's budgets, this quarter's objectives, whatever it is, it drives short-termism. So a lot of that drives a lot of noise within organizations. And I won't even mention all things around how organizations manage performance and all of the processes, because you just won't stop for the rest of the
No, you're right. Your short-term focus, though, that reminds me of you've heard about magnet ball?
No?
It's playing magnet ball. Well, when you watch, and there you go, I'm going to teach you something about football. You're going to like this. When you watch a professional team play football, the players all have their own name. The word for it is they all have their own role. They play a position. That's the word. They all go and stand in different parts of the field. Whereas when you see a bunch of 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds playing football, it's like the football's a magnet and they all just chase after the ball. But in a lot of organizations, there's just a lot of lack of trust and everybody's chasing the ball, and it's like magnet ball, which in turn creates a lot of noise.
I can't believe you used a footballing analogy,
It
James.
is the one and only term it is ever going to happen.
Yeah, but then you couldn't remember whether it was roles or positions. So only
Well,
half
I don't think I could. There's not so much remember. It's just didn't know, mate, to be honest with you.
Good effort, though.
Thank you.
I think other things that impact and create noise is people working in silos. So organizations are often designed in silos and they think in their silos. And I think that siloed mentality can create a lot of noise, because I'm thinking about my bit and optimizing my bit, and I don't mind what's happening in your bit and what the impacts of my changes are on you. All that sort of stuff creates noise.
Which I suppose brings us back to that point about lack of focus, doesn't it, really? But on top of that, though, some organizations are really bad at blame. Because if you want to create a lot of noise, just start blaming people for poor performance. And then you'll see people rushing around making excuses and God knows what else. But none of this really helps improve the situation at all. It's just creating organizational noise.
Yeah. And when you're talking about that kind of noise and people's behaviors, I think ego drives a lot of how organizations work and the noise that created in organizations. And I mean, so many times I was talking to somebody earlier today, funny enough, I was saying that senior leaders are like work generation machines. It's like, I'd like to see this. Wouldn't it be interesting if we should do this? Here's another idea. Go and think about this. And was it Jeff Bezos who said that when he started his business, one of his coaches said to him, Jeff, the single thing that could kill your business quickest is you, because you have just too many ideas and the organization isn't in a position to absorb your constant new ideas. So you need to get control over that.
Which should start to link back, but that goes back to the whole point about lack of focus.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think the kind of top down leadership, I think, often happens. And it's like that old saying, you've got one mouth and two ears, and they should be used in that proportion. But senior leaders use their mouth constantly and they don't listen to understand what's really going on. So that broadcast constantly, I think that creates a lot of noise.
And I suppose organizations just sleepwalk into this, right? I mean, some managers, they just create noise to create distraction. I mean,
Yeah.
the classic example is our friend Donald, but it almost seems like, well, it's Monday. I need to do something outrageous just to cover up from all the shit I did created last week.
Yeah. And all of those politicians, leaders are not thinking necessarily, does what I'm doing move the country, the society, people forward? It's just creating that kind of illusion of noise. So I think there are lots of points around why it exists, but really focus on then, James, from our experience, what are the things that we've done? Because we worked in some very noisy organizations and very noisy situations. What are the things that we've done that helped us get cut through and still deliver great results, even despite the corporate noise? Our podcast is all about helping people, teams, and organizations perform better and enjoy work more.
And I go as far as saying that we believe that everyone and every team has the potential to transform their performance by optimizing what they currently do.
So if you'd like to discuss how we can help you transform your performance, then get in touch or maybe check out our website. We also do speaking events, mentoring, and advice work as well.
Well, so I think the first thing, and it's a bit bloody obvious, right, but get proactive about it. So you don't want to be caught on the back foot and wallop with a load of noise. You're in a far better position if you go out there and you find out what your customers want and you find out what they're unhappy about, because then you're not going to get surprised by stuff. So that would be my first piece of advice, is just really get proactive and find out what the situation is. So an example there will be, well, to do twice actually, 2 organizations, but just sent out some customer surveys to your internal customers and find out, well, what their problems are, what do they think? And it's never terribly surprising. They'll come back and they'll tell you that you're too slow and your quality's poor, and by the way, you cost too much. So that will be the feedback. It doesn't matter where you sit, but at least if you've actually gone out and asked them, then at least it shows that you're listening to them. So that would be my first piece of advice. I did incidentally work for somebody who I suggested they did this, and they said, no, we can't do that, and it's far too dangerous. Well, how well went. Anyway.
But I think you're right, James. I think the ostrich approach, it seems like the easiest way of dealing with things in the moment, but it has no longevity about it at all. The other thing that links in with this is be honest about stuff. So show your vulnerability, show your problems. Don't try and hide stuff all the time. People don't like cover-ups. They don't like spin. They don't like people who have massive egos and are showing off all the time. If you do those things, invariably to some people, you're making yourself a target. And at the end of the day, noise is often pushed in the direction of a target to slow people down.
Well, and you can see that, sorry, coming back to politics, but you can see that in American politics. In America, there is vanishingly little humility there. And what they get, right, a whole load of noise. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So be proactive, find out what your customers want, and be humble. Go on. What would you say next?
I think the point you made about focus is a really important one. And all the organizations that I go into spend time being clear. Have they understood their purpose, and have they communicated that in an engaging way? Because that gives you a really good basis for challenging behaviors or activity when it doesn't line up with that. And I know we touched on it before, but it's back to that story about the British rowing team and Ben Hunt Davis and the team, and they were aiming to get a gold medal. And the mantra that they had was, will it make the boat go faster? And they questioned everything with that question. And I think that's what focus does for you. You can always look at things and say, well, does this email, does this project, does this behavior, does it make the boat go faster? We don't do that often enough.
That's an interesting point, though, because you can get sideswiped by somebody bitching or some email or whatever the hell it will be. But actually asking yourself, does that make the boat go faster? Because if it does, then actually it's not noise, is it?
No. And I think that's part of one of the things that if there is a problem there, understand the problem, face into the problem. Don't just assume that it is noise. It's one of the arts is being able to see the wood for the trees. So being able to say, right, actually, no, this person isn't just noisy. They have a point. There is something that I can do to improve the situation. So face into it.
Yeah, which actually lines up with your point about humility a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I have got a problem. I need to fix it. And these are the things I am going to do. The other thing there is actually, you might be getting a load of grief from someone and you might think it is totally unreasonable. In which case, if you are clear about it, go and have a chat with your boss, because your boss should buy you some air cover as well. So there's more than one way to clear the noise, but making sure that your boss is with you is also a very sensible tactic, I think.
Yeah. And one of the other things, which I know is often a rarity in today's world at times, is get some data and history, get the evidence for things, and don't just don't become facts. Despite what Donald thinks, things don't become facts just because you say them out loud. Actually, you can cut through the noise if you are more evidence and fact based. So back up some of your assertions, some of your beliefs, some of your activities with some data and facts.
And that links to that, something Amanda once pointed out to me, is you'll get people saying, oh, they always do that. Well, who's they and what is always? Because actually, when you've got that sort of generalization going on, that's not helpful, but you can get really fatchy about who did what specifically on what occasion, then that will dampen down the noise as well, which is your point about data and history. So really get the facts. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, a lot of noise has its basis in subjective opinions and, like you were saying, bitching and moaning about stuff. The easiest way of dealing with that at times is stick to the facts and evidence based for your opinion, rather than just slacking stuff off and moaning.
Another one is a bit obvious, but walk in the other person's shoes. So if somebody is creating you an awful lot of grief, well, why are they creating you an awful lot of grief? What is it that you are doing that is upsetting them, and why is that upsetting them? Because you don't have to fight fire with fire. You can just, if you can understand somebody else's position, then you can invariably do something that will reduce the noise.
You can take action, can't you? Whereas if you don't understand it, you tend to be reactive and you're just reacting to whatever they're saying and doing. And I had a situation recently with one of my daughters, and she was having problems with her boss at work. And actually, I said to her, are you thinking about what's going on for your boss that might be driving behaviors? We immediately personalize it. It's me. It's what I'm doing. This is what I've done. Whereas actually, if you understand that people have a lot of stuff going on in their work lives and their personal lives that cause them to react certain ways. So really thinking about, is that noise the superficial thing that you're seeing in front of you, or is there something that's driving that? And understand that helps you take action.
And gets the root cause. Denial's never a good strategy either. My daughter, bless her, she got some feedback. They all got hauled in, so about 30 graduate trainees all got hauled into a meeting. And they were told it was a personal branding meeting, and they were told that the executives didn't think they looked professional enough or something like that, or I wasn't there. But instantly, of course, you get into this thing of denial. Well, they obviously aren't talking about me. They're talking about the other 29. Or it's those guys over there and not us, or whatever the hell it might be. But actually trying to understand, rather than denying the problem, trying to understand what the problem is and who specifically thinks what is really very helpful. Then you can do something about it. Which I suppose takes me to the final point, right? Is if there is a lot of noise, you can continue ignoring it as long as you like, but that is not a good strategy. I suppose it's your emu point, but you need to do something about it.
Ostrich even.
Emus. Do emus stick their head in the ground or not?
No, I think they're very similar birds. Ostrich, emu. I mean, they would consider them very different, but to us uninformed people, they're very similar. But I don't think that people talk about being an emu.
Yeah, they somewhere in Australia, aren't they? Somewhere in Africa.
I don't know. We're getting into spaces that we clearly know nothing about, James. I think that's the key thing.
But the final thing is, if there's a lot of noise, you have to do something about it. It will not go away by itself.
And I think back to the do something, whether it's, if you're looking at the noise, if you think about my example about emails, the amount of email traffic in your team or your organization isn't going to change unless you do something about it. So tackling it head on and finding ways of dealing with it, it won't go away. It's not just going to suddenly disappear.
Another one to do. But I think the thing is, don't contribute to the noise.
Very good point.
Right? So it's very easy to copy 27 people into something and respond instantaneously and inflame a situation, but it's invariably not very helpful.
And I think some of the smallest things, a good example, have you ever BCC'd someone into an email?
No. Have I?
And I think you never should. And I think that's a little tiny thing. Think about that. If you've ever blind copied someone,
It's not helpful.
It's not helpful. But your point is a great one, which is think about.
You can't trust that they're not to copy everybody else in when they respond.
I reckon you've done that.
Do you think
that has happened to you?
You've responded rather than the blind copy.
You've done one of them. You've definitely been involved. But the point is a good one. Think about how you're contributing towards the noise. So, in summary, I think from our experience, noise is almost always inevitable in organizations to varying degrees. And it takes many forms. But in general, it's what stops you from doing a great job, the corporate treacle.
And there are a few things you can do to stop the noise or at least mitigate the impact of it. The first one for me is just be proactive, get out there, understand what's going on.
The second one was just have a bit of humility about things. Don't be honest. Don't be a show-off.
Yeah. Number 3, maybe the organization lacks focus, but doesn't mean you shouldn't. So just be really clear about what's important to you, what the 2 or 3 things, and focus on those.
The next one was face into the noise. Do not be an ostrich or an emu if you're in James's world.
I like this one. A bit of data and some history. So what are the facts? What really is going on as opposed to what's the emotion?
Don't contribute towards the noise. Think about what you're doing.
No blind copying people in. And put yourself in the other person's shoes. Understand what's driving them.
And finally, just do something because it won't go away and it'll carry on impacting your ability to do a great job. So do something. Hopefully you found this episode useful. And we'll see you next week.
Cheers.
We cover a whole host of topics on this podcast,
from purpose to corporate jargon,
but always focused on one thing, getting the job done well.
Easier said than done. So if you've got unhappy customers or employees, bosses or regulators breathing down your neck,
if your backlogs are out of control and your costs are spiraling, and that big IT transformation project that you've been promised just keeps failing to deliver,
we can help. If you need to improve your performance, your team's performance, or your organization's, get in touch at jimmy@ajobdonewell.com
or james@ajobdonewell.com.